Today we're going to be doing the worldwide voyage highlight video for the Hokulea, and then the latest voyage of the Hokulea. But in the meanwhile, keep to the red. Our trivia today: the rule of the road at sea, keep to the right when approaching a passing vessel, dates from the time when steering oars were at the starboard quarter. Hence, when vessels approached or came alongside, the steering oar was saved the risk of damage. And so today we have, as I said, the worldwide voyage highlight video. It's the Hokulea that traveled 42,000 nautical miles in 3 years and visited 150 ports in over 20 countries to train a new generation of traditional navigators and to grow a global movement to Malama, Honua, or care for island Earth. Here is a look at some of the highlights from this momentous voyage around the world. And we will follow that with the latest voyage of the Hokulea. Now, Julia was earlier talking about Miki, and she was talking about Miki Tomita, and she's out of the University of Hawaii. Julia has worked with her for many years through her organization. And she wrote to Miki this morning and asked if she might join us later to talk about what is happening with the Hokulea. And she has been asked to coordinate the upcoming sail. And they're currently in the midst of launching a voyage to Tahiti. The larger vision is a 6-year circumnavigation of the Pacific that embarks in 2023. And in fact, I received an email this morning, and I will put a link to that information in our next missive. So if you wish to follow it, you may be able to do that. So Graham, if you would bring up that first video, that would be terrific.
Who was the Wiki in the chat conversation that was asked to Julia?
The Wiki in which conversation?
Person named Wiki, who had gone to the beach to pick up plastics.
Oh,
Miki, M-I-K-I is how her name is spelled.
Yes.
I think I might have put, yes, Miki. She didn't go, they wouldn't let her, of course, take the children to where all those weapons were still lying down. That had been cleaned up before they went over to the island, James. But their coastline in Hawaii got all of the garbage from Japan.
Yes.
3 feet tall. They were down there for hours cleaning up the mess.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. And I think another response about who is Miki, she's a professor at the University of Hawaii. Julia, you can give more information about her profession and what she does.
Miki, I met at the University of Hawaii, Manoa, so there are several campuses on the several islands, at the laboratory school, which is on the same piece of land as the university. It's all in a straight line. And they've built a path of peace through International School Peace Gardens to connect from the kindergarten right up to the Faculty of Education on the same campus. Miki was the director of the laboratory school section and teacher, major dean of studies. So Miki and I had a lot to do, and she invited me to visit schools and do a lot of things. But you'll see I've put at the very beginning of the chat on our website, the IHTEC website. Sorry.
I will put that link on our next missive, Julia.
Okay, it's right at the very top of where I started chatting. I had a whole team there, or IHTEC. We're sort of scattered all over the world, IHTEC is. But we had a whole Hawaiian team and now 20 schools there. I might have said that before. The really interesting thing for me that I know I'm only just a tiny little dot that happened at the right time and was drawn into what's already was going on, bringing the peace and sustainability from the outside, because they hadn't really used those words before. They hadn't been connected with UNESCO, and a lot of things that we did, Janice and I, at the UN level with ECOSOC and so on, actually made it possible for them to go much further. Then there's two other people. There's Maya Satoru Ning, who was Barack Obama's sister, who has now got a peace art studio, and she's doing peace through art all the way around the world. And then there's Jenii. Jenii and Miki worked together at the Polynesian Voyaging Society. But Jenii hadn't got the educational background that Miki has. So it was a blending of ocean knowledge and educational knowledge. There's also a lady called Lydi Burnell, Lydi, and she's a gardener. So she's focusing on schools with food development. She asked me to give her a letter of support when she planned to go back teaching, but she wanted to go back to the university to study sustainability. And that was the outcome of our work together over 8 years. So I'm just so proud of all of them, you know. What can I say? I was only just putting little bits in every month for 8 years, you know, and you never know what's going to happen.
Okay, thank you. Seamus, go ahead, unmute yourself.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia, for fascinating audiovisual information or information conveyed with these videos and so forth. When I was in Hawaii quite some years ago, the land issues were quite big issues. I got to know some Hawaiians and I listened to them, and this was back in the 80s, and you know, I found out that one or two families owned a lot of the land in Hawaii, and also too that it was good to see from your presentation how the Hawaiian language is being revived, and I couldn't agree more that without that juncture of having the language in school and the language at home, the language dies. Just for an example, I was educated in the Gaelic language until I was about 10 years of age, and but my parents didn't speak Gaelic. They grew up in Ireland, but we really grew up without any culture. Our life was more or less a British lifestyle. There's nothing wrong with that, but I never really got to know Irish lifestyle until I came to study in Canada. And I just want to thank you and for providing fascinating information, which will gives me a new perspective on things. Thank you.
Anybody else want to make any comments or have any questions? Go ahead, Julia.
With the time zone, and if you've never lived in the tropics, have any of you lived in the tropics? One over there.
Janice,
two.
yes.
Janice has, yes.
Janice did the world cruise, like the circumnavigation.
Right.
Yeah.
So
Oh,
you
in
get
fact-
up earlier in the mornings because it's too jolly hot in the middle of the day, and you go and have a little nap after lunch, and then you get up again and do the rest of your work till later at night. So they're usually up 6:30, 7. Just a comment.
Mhm.
Okay.
Um,
Anybody else with any questions or comments before we turn it back over to Diane? Go ahead, Karen.
No, I just want to say thank you very much. I found the whole video very interesting. I mean, what a voyage. And they've been doing it for so long, 45 years, I think I heard.
mhm, mhm.
Amazing, just amazing. Thank you.
Yeah. It truly, truly is. And I guess the messages that I took away from both of those videos, one was that the Hokulea is a symbol of change. And another was that the circumnavigation is to help to make things better. So hopeful, so positive, so in light of so much that's going on around the world, it's so good to have this kind of thing. And also another message that Nainoa mentioned was that the hope of reducing the storm of fear. I have always believed that one of the reasons we have prejudice is because we don't understand other people, because you have a fear of who they are because you don't know who they are. And when you get to know people, then the fear disappears because they're just like you and me. So that, I think, was a huge, huge message there. And that the voyage is meant to sew people together to reduce some of that fear. And then I'm also really interested in the virtual canoe. I was watching there and thinking, oh, if only I were younger, I would love to go on one of those voyages. But if I can't do that, perhaps I can go onto the virtual canoe and join in that voyage. And I think he was talking about writing poetry or creating art and then loading it up onto the canoes so that you share a little bit of your own heritage and become part of the heritage of the world and understanding the world better. So I thank you, Julia, for giving us those links. I think they were incredibly important and open up a different view and different understanding. I thought as I watched it, I know so much about the Pacific. I know so little about the Atlantic, and I know so little about the Pacific. And I have learned a lot more. Linda Anderson and I visited Bali and Indonesia on a cruise. And so I got a little bit of it that way, but this was just eye-opening. So thank you for that. And I will talk about what's happening next week then. Guess who's presenting next week? We've got a couple of hands up here. Jim, go ahead, but unmute yourself.
I just checked a bit of history about Hawaii. Hawaii was annexed from Spain in 1898 by the US, and then in 1959, Hawaii, along with Alaska, became a US state. So that's my Googled history.
Thank you. Thank you. And Julia, I saw your hand up there. Did you want to add something?
I just wanted to talk a little bit about the Great Barrier Reef and the fact that south of us in Mexico, where the Women's Island is, just off Puerto Morelos, off Cancun, there's the second largest reef in the world.
Oh, yes.
And my children took me for a walk on my cell phone. They were down the coast from Adelaide, Seamus, right down that coast to the Mount Gambier. There's another major reef that's never talked about. And it seems to be reasonably healthy so far, but we're keeping an eye on it. Anyway, I've always got lots to say, but I'll go away now.
Thank you, Julia. That's excellent. So next week, I'm going to be talking about the Great Boat Lift out of Manhattan on 9/11, but I'm going to look at the event in the context of some of the other players as well. So the air controllers and the Newfoundlanders in Gander. There's a wonderful 60 minutes DVD that comes out of Australia, and the narrator or the host interviews a couple who landed on Gander on one of those 80-odd planes that landed there. And also take a look at the Merchant Marine Services personnel who also helped with the boat lift. So that will happen next week. And the week after, we were supposed to have Melody Schaffer, and she was going to talk about the Transat Jacques Weber 2021, the race that started in Le Havre and France and went to Fort-de-France in Martinique and back again. However, I got an email from her this morning, and she's in Antigua right now, and she will be on the ocean taking her boat to Europe in order to go into another race. And so she has canceled for the 13th. And I have asked her to come to see us on the first session in October. So I'm hoping she'll respond positively there. She's already prepared the presentation and they changed the timelines on her. So instead of that, on the 13th, courtesy of TVO at Seamus Stokes' recommendation, we will see a video called the SS Great Britain. And Rob Bell, the host there, uncovers the story behind what was once the longest passenger ship in the world. And this vast vessel included innovations still found on almost all modern ships. Seamus has watched this. It's one of the TVO series of great boats of the world, or great ships of the world. And we may draw on that series another time. So thank you all for being here, and reminder that we do have our breakout rooms afterwards. So please join us, and you do have to join the room. And with that, pipes out.